Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 here to do some SEC bracketology. This is going to include games through Saturday, February the 18th. Of course, the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee released its own top 16 seeds this weekend, and no surprise, Alabama was a 1 seed in the NCAA Tournament. Blake, shocking news here.
Yeah, not much. I feel like last couple of years, there's been a little suspense for the SEC when it comes to the top 16 reveal, but not this year because, I mean, you knew exactly where teams were going to be at because there are only going to be two of them in there. So, yeah, no surprise. As I said before the Tennessee game, they can lose this game to Tennessee on the road and still be the number one overall seed, and that hasn't changed. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, that's where Alabama's at, and they came back and beat Georgia by 49. So, I mean, they've got the most impressive resume of any team in the country, and unless they start losing more games, they do. They have a good shot to to be the number one overall seed because again, they've got the wins to support it right now, and what else do you say? It's rightfully so. Alabama's the number one team.
Yeah, wins that Alabama has over teams that you could see in the field at Houston, Arkansas, Auburn at home, Michigan State, and North Carolina, although I'm starting to seriously doubt the latter. On a neutral floor, Memphis at home, bubble team, Kentucky at home, team that's in right now, Missouri on the road, team that's in right now, Mississippi State on the road, and at Liberty also at home. Liberty, a team getting some 13 seed type love. So anyway, all right, next up, Tennessee, which one it was on the 3 line this weekend, Blake, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, the Vols, we talk about weird resumes in the league. Tennessee's is getting just increasingly that. I don't think anybody in the country has 3 better wins than what Tennessee's got. With Alabama and Texas at home and Kansas on the road. Kansas and Alabama would be 1 seeds right now. Texas got a shot. Maryland on neutral floor. Southern Cal on a neutral floor. Auburn at home. All wins Tennessee has in its back pocket also, but the Vols have 3 quad 1 losses. I think Gary Parrish went over this on his podcast on Sunday night. I think Tennessee was maybe the only team in the top 40 to have 3 quad 2 losses. Actually, I'm sorry, they've got 4. Or maybe there was one more. But point is, and now Tennessee's got nothing in quad 3 and quad 4 in terms of losses, but
They're 3 and 4 in quad 2.
Yeah, you I don't know why that was so problematic for me to spit out. But anyway, yeah. A lot of big wins and some losses that are a little bit troublesome too.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth noting though, like they were the top 3 seed, right? Yeah, they were ranked at 9. So everybody, kind of talks about it like, well, Tennessee's never going to move in the net. They're still number 3 in the net. Doesn't matter. But this is still a team that's lost 4-6 now. And as we said, the 2 games in the middle could have went either way, last second shots. But I mean, for Tennessee, to their credit, like they did the bulk of their work before, it got to the last couple weeks, and that accounts for something. As boy, that's going to become a theme here in a second. What you do before the past couple weeks matters, and so I think that's where Tennessee can lean on that, knowing that yes, they had wins over Texas, 2 wins over Mississippi State. And again, if you're a Tennessee fan, you're rooting for Mississippi State to get in because that just makes your resume look even better. Maybe that helps push you to the 2 line. As you mentioned, they beat Kansas, they beat Maryland, lost Arizona, who's a 2 seed. So those kind of things will help. But as I kind of said after the Alabama game, it's like you still got a team that you feel like can beat anybody. But they're also a team that has lost some games that sometimes you don't think they should have lost. And yet, as we talked about, if you're looking at just the net, which remember is just one part of the equation, how you win matters. And I mean, Tennessee, as we said, and you look at the efficiency numbers too, right? There's no more efficient defensive team in the country than Tennessee. And what they've done has helped them with the metrics, with the computers. We all know how I think about the computers and all that. But you also, again, I don't think you can discount it just because you're saying it's a computer and it shouldn't matter and all this. But like, I also want to point that out too. Like, I get it with Tennessee; they're 20-7 now, but they did do a lot of good work up until what's happened the past 3 weeks, if you want to use that. But remember, even in losing, right? Let's keep this in mind. Even in losing 4 of 6, there's still 2 wins in there over tournament teams. It's like the two teams they've beaten. Alabama, the top overall seed, that carries a lot of weight. And they've beaten Auburn, who I know is kind of trending in the wrong direction, but it's still an NCAA tournament team right now. So they've kind of negated some of those losses. And as we said too, what else matters, right? The 1-point losses. I mean, they're losses, but you're still going to look at that and say 1 point at the buzzer on both. And so I think Tennessee is kind of one of those interesting studies because I understand the point that everyone will have about, well, the net rankings are just ridiculous because they won't move Tennessee anywhere, even when they lose. But at the same time, remember, there's more that goes into it than just that when it comes to the net rankings and all the other computer rankings. And when you factor all that in, Tennessee is kind of going to be one of those interesting teams because they have such an interesting resume. The body of work has been so overly impressive at times that they have just wowed you to no end. But then you can also look at sort of the recent part of it where they've lost some games, they've struggled from an efficiency standpoint. And so yet they're still kind of sitting in such a good spot.
Okay. There are strength of resume metrics. And
by the way, the strength of internet metrics right now are not in Chris's favor. So let's just point that out.
They are not. This is
on the second video here. Yeah.
This has been an ongoing gripe that is beyond my control for 3 weeks now.
Yeah.
But in any case, okay. Strength of resume, which is measured, ESPN's got its metric and KPI has its. And I think those are two that the attorney considers because it starts to get really difficult to know how to weight everything, the good and the bad. And there's a lot of good on Tennessee's resume, but a lot of, I don't know that I'd call it bad, but very not favorable, I guess is a good way to put it. And so those computers, KPI has Tennessee at 7. Strength of resume has Tennessee at 15. That averages out to an 11, which puts Tennessee on the 3 line, which is exactly where the committee had it. Okay.
Hold on one
By
second.
that same, sure.
All right. Let's remember this too with Tennessee, okay? Because we brought this stat up way back when, but let's bring it up again. Tennessee has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Basically, they have almost 10 wins by 30 points or more this season. And I think you have to keep that in mind.
Metrics love them. Yeah.
You have to keep that in mind. And a lot of that came in non-conference play. But remember, I know you can look at just the net, right, and say, well, it won't factor in over a certain amount. Understandable. But you have to remember that Tennessee has that many wins this season that are by close to maybe 26 to 40 something points. They've got a lot of them. And so that's why I said doing the work early has really helped Tennessee because they are able to still kind of lean on that here as we move forward and they've hit kind of this stretch where they've struggled a little bit.
Okay, I want to push back on that narrative about capping margin of victory because I don't know that I buy it. And here's one reason why. Adjusted offensive and defensive efficiency are considered in the calculation, right? They don't just throw away extra possessions in those games, do they, and not count them?
Yeah.
I mean, they might say explicitly it doesn't count, but does it not show up in that? I mean, I'm asking.
Yeah.
I don't.
Well,
I think that's where it factors in, even if they say it doesn't factor in. I could be completely wrong about that, but I think that is a line that I'm having a hard time believing.
Well, and look, let's go beyond the computers, okay? Because remember, humans are going to make these decisions, but they're going to use the computers as references. You can't tell me there's a human that's going to look at some of these games and say, well, I'm going to factor in that 40-point loss the same as I'm going to factor in that 2-point loss or
Right.
10-point loss. It's not happening. And that's why Tennessee is a team that, remember, we also are playing a predictive game, right? Whether you want to, whether you like it or not, you're playing the predictive game. And if you have a 27 game sample size with Tennessee, and you can see that of their 20 wins, about half of them, and I know you can say, well, the opponents weren't great, but if you can say that about half of them have come by like 25 or more points, and they basically beat the teams they should have beat in very impressive fashion, but they also have beat a bubble team in Mississippi State by 34. Um, they won at South Carolina by 43 away from home. Remember, if you do some of this away from home, that also matters because it shows that you can play well, not just in your home gym. They beat Kansas, right, by 14 on a neutral floor. Ones like that, they beat Butler by 26 on a neutral floor. So, like, those are the things that still matter. And I think we have to remember that with Tennessee. And that's why a lot of people can point this stuff out, but it's more on the fact of they're losing some games now, but like I said, the how they've won games tells me that if I'm putting together, a field, I'm still going to weigh a lot of what they did throughout the season because otherwise, why do you play the games? And understand that, yeah, they're probably a team that if we put them in the spot, we feel pretty good about them being, the top 3 seed or one of the 2 seeds or whatever, because we have enough sort of reference point to show us that for the most part, they've taken care of business in convincing fashion, in half their games. And so all that stuff has to factor into.
People have their issues with the net as opposed to the RPI. Now, I think people are being selective. I think does this metric favor my team, whether the other one did, and they picked their lane accordingly. But this
We'll
is
get
what I
there.
like better about I mean, not that fans would ever do that. Would they, Blake? I mean, certainly not.
There's going to
But
be one team that is going to be
I mean,
quite a focus of this
hypothetically
bracketology.
speaking, if fans were to do it, but look, here's the thing. Let's say you're picking a random team, UNC Asheville, and you're picking another random team, Nickel State, and UNC Asheville plays Kansas 10 times on a neutral floor and loses all 10 of them by a point. Nickel State plays Kansas 10 times on a neutral floor, loses 9 of them by 50 points, and wins the other one by 1. Who do you think is the better team? One's 1-9, one's 0-10, but that's and I'm making ridiculous arguments to make the point, but that is the point of incorporating predictive metrics in this, is to try to pick up on quality of things that may not be reflected in the win-loss record or the RPI, which ignored that stuff. So if you've got a problem with net, again, that's an extreme example, made extreme on purpose to make sure I get the point across, but that is your argument. So anyway,
let's save this for the team that's going to matter the most with this. Let's get to the other teams here,
there's a team that
we've got a heart out here
it.
in a little bit, and I want to make sure we get through to make sure we spend enough time on one team that we both know we need to spend a little time on for this video. So let's roll on through.
Yes. Yeah. They may not be listening at this point. Okay. Let's just put this numerically. I went a few minutes ago on about the strength of resume computers and their KPI and ESPN strength of resume. And I, honest to God, I do not know where to go with these next 5 teams. And I'm going to just give you the average between KPI and strength of resume, and you will see why I'm confused as to which team would be next in the bracket. I've got an opinion. I don't know that it's right. You got Team A that is 26 between those. You got Team B that is 27 between those two metrics on average. You got Team C that is 28. You got Team D that is 30. You got Team E that is 31. So, I mean, you have 5 teams that the resume metrics literally could not bundle any closer together than they've got them. All right, Blake, if you're picking the bracket today, which SEC team do you put in next?
Oh boy. All right. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna pull up something I need to look at here just for my own sanity to be able to figure this out. So
Well, let me tell you, I've changed my mind in just uttering the question. My answer
right.
flipped from one team to another. That's how close this is.
Well, I guess I can start from the backwards way and the team I wouldn't pick, right? I wouldn't pick Auburn because I think that, and I'm not saying this is the order, but like I'm doing process of elimination here. Um, I wouldn't pick. Let's see, 5 teams. Okay, so hold on. We're talking about Auburn, Missouri, Arkansas, A&M, Kentucky. Is that right?
That's
Or am I
correct.
forgetting somebody? Okay.
And just to be clear, strength of resume metrics on average, Missouri is 28, Auburn is 30, A&M is 27, Arkansas is 26, Kentucky is 31.
Okay. All
Now,
right.
one more piece that may or may not matter: predictive averages, and these 3 predictive computers will be BPI, Ken Palm, and Sagarin. Missouri 64, Auburn 20, A&M 27, Arkansas 19, and Kentucky 30.
I like that we're doing this. Let's group all these teams together. That way we can get to the good stuff here in a second. So, all right. Um, all right. So I'm looking at each of these teams resume wise right now, and I'm going to try to see what can separate these teams. Mississippi State's not included in this, correct? That's right. So, um, I mean, in all honesty,
That's correct.
hmm, boy, Kentucky's would look a lot better if they didn't have that quad 4 loss. Um, I mean,
Okay, I will give you what I think is my separator here. Okay,
is it
this team
Missouri? I don't
has
know.
it is Missouri, and that was not my first answer. And I know Missouri didn't look great this weekend, but I'm going to go back to 2 things that we have harped on with Missouri all year. Of these 5 teams, there are 2 teams that do not have a loss in quad 3 or 4. One is Missouri,
Yep.
the other is Auburn. Missouri is 11-0 against quad 3 and 4, Auburn 10-0. But big wins, this is where it's really a problem for Auburn. Auburn has beaten Arkansas at home, Northwestern neutral, Missouri at home. Missouri has beaten Tennessee on the road, Iowa State at home, Arkansas at home, Illinois neutral floor, Kentucky at home, and UCF. I always use that one. I don't know what that's worth these days, but I look at Missouri has 2 things going for it that nobody else in this group of 5 has. I think its top end wins are better, and it does not have a blemish. In fact, Missouri didn't have a blemish in quad 2. Auburn has got 2 losses quad 2. So all Missouri's losses are in quad 1. Now, the thing is, the predictive computers like Missouri way less than the other ones. And so, like, if you're going to say it's not Missouri, that is the hill that you go to. But if you look at the things that add to resumes, Missouri's blemishes, bad blemishes, are none, and its good wins are more than everybody else in that group. And that's why I would put Missouri as the next team in.
The good for Missouri is what you just said. It's a clean sheet. Knock on wood, Missouri fans. And 2, 3, 4 quads. But the bad part is when Missouri loses, boy, they lose. And that's something they have going against them a little bit. Kansas by 28, A&M on the road by 18, Alabama at home by 21, Auburn on the road by 33. You know, it's like it may Mississippi State on the road by 11. That's 10 plus, right? So that's part of the issue, I think, for Missouri and why the predictives will look at some of those and see, yeah, you know, and then they've had some close wins, right? And we always say that matters. Buzzer beater against Tennessee, beat Arkansas by 3 at home, Vanderbilt by 3 at home, UCF by 2, Wichita State by 4. Go back to some of those earlier wins, right? Southern Indiana by 6, Penn by 7. So like it's one of those things. And as we said, I think that factors in too to an extent. But I kind of agree with you, and I didn't think I would either. Like the more I look at Missouri, I'm like, oh, they may be in trouble. But actually, they still have, again, it's because they've played 12 quad one games helps in and of itself, right? But the fact is, they've won 4 of those. That's not it's a third of the the ones they play, but they've still won them, and they are still being helped by the clean sheet and the having no bad losses, right? But like we said, the problem for Missouri is that chance is going to change here soon because the last 3 games in the season are all bad loss opportunities. And that's not what you want because 2 of them are on the road at Georgia, at LSU, home against Ole Miss. Things get tricky if it gets to that point, right? So I think if they beat Mississippi State at home on Tuesday, all of a sudden you can sort of sit back and probably be in a spot where you can lose, you can afford to lose to a Georgia or an LSU on the road. Not that you should want to do that, but I think you can afford it if you're able to pick up that win against Mississippi State on Tuesday. If not, then I think you're saying, all right, we really don't need to lose these kind of games, right? We really need to finish 3-1 because if they finish 3-1, I think they're a lock. But it's like 2-2, it just depends. But I still actually, even then, if you're just assuming those, it's not an Ole Miss at home, right? Um, I think they should still be fine to make the tournament. It's just a matter of seeding at that point. But yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think Missouri, the computer numbers will rank them lower than all the other teams, but I think there's something to, like you said, maybe them being the next team in line.
I feel like the committee always leans heavily that way. And like, I'll give you an example that comes to mind. I don't know if this is the exact comparison here, but it may be the best I can think of just on the fly. Providence last year was, I want to say around 40 in the predictive computers, but it had a lot of big wins and it went 25-5. So it's got fewer losses than Missouri's got. But Providence got a 15 seed. I mean, not a 15 seed. Providence was the number 15 team overall for the tournament, which made it a 4 seed. And so when the committee was presented with a resume that predictive computers didn't like, there was a big disconnect between that and results. The computer went almost all in on results. So again, I don't know if that's the exact parallel. There may be some places where that falls apart, but where you get dinged is those losses in those lower quads. And my goodness, Missouri not having a loss outside of quad 1.
Yes.
You can't pick a lot of flaws with that.
They don't have a loss outside of quad 1 right now. Missouri fans, do it again. Knock on wood. They're also, A&M only has more quad 1 wins of this group. Arkansas only has 3. Auburn has 2. Mississippi State has 3. Kentucky has 4. A&M has 5. So Missouri is basically second in quad 1 wins of this group. First in terms of quad 2, quad 3, quad 4 record. So, yeah, it's understandable why I think they would still be next in line, perhaps.
Okay, the one thing that you can pick with Missouri that the committees would probably seize on, the non-conference strength of schedule, it's 190. So that is the one thing that you could hold against Missouri. Although again, beat Illinois, beat Iowa State. So you did pick up some big wins there.
And didn't blow out a lot of those teams.
Yeah. And this is very much upsetting Oreo where we're going here.
Oreo wants to move on to the next team.
My goodness. I own the world's most high maintenance dog. We can debate a lot of things. We can't debate that. Okay. Next up on because this is the one where you can really pick a lot of flaws with, but this is the team that I would put in next, and it's Texas A&M. And the non-conference strength of schedule, 249, that is what the committee held against the Aggies a year ago. Quads for A&M, 5-4 quad 1, 2-1 quad 2, 5-0 quad 3, 8-2 quad 4. 2 quad 4 losses is not something that you want in your resume. I heard Gary Parrish say this morning. He said quad 4 losses is kind of like 2 losses. And I don't know if that's right, but it does kind of seem that way. Okay, wins: Arkansas at home, a sweep of Auburn, Missouri at home, and a pair of wins against Florida. That I don't know what the committee will do with those because they meant something at the time without Castleton, or Castleton was playing both those, is what I meant to say. They don't have him now. But yeah, I mean, but A&M it's that eye test team, Blake. If you say who in the league don't you want to play right now, the answer is number one Alabama, and I think it's number two number two A&M.
Yeah, I mean the computers have caught up on A&M though at this point. Like they've caught
Right.
up to where I think they should be. Non-conference strength of schedule is 250, so that that hurts a little bit. And again, same scenario, right? You feel like it's similar to last year. The two quad four losses really stand out, and so that's why they continue to have to do a little more work than others perhaps would be in this point because they have those two on their schedule. And oh, by the way, they still matter even though they happened a long time ago. Um, but you can also understand there is a human element too, and I think the human element of seeing how this team has played since then is going to matter when the committee is making those decisions. So yes, A&M has moved from people not sure if they're still in the bubble. There are still people who are convinced that A&M's on the bubble at 12-2. I'm just not of the agreement of that. I think that is
Jerry
not true.
Palm had them last in his latest bracket. I don't agree with that either.
I don't agree with that at all. So I don't see it. But unless you're projecting out and saying they're going to lose out or lose three of their final four, which by the way they could lose three of their last four. Let's not act like that's not a possibility. Tennessee at Mississippi State, at Ole Miss, home against Alabama. Very possible they could lose three. If they do, then maybe things get interesting. But I think they are in a very good spot at this point. I'm not saying they'd be a 5 seed, but my guess is A&M would be around a 9-ish seed right now, would be my thinking. Maybe 10, I guess, if you want to go lower scenario. I think that's about where they are now. So again, not completely safe, but they're in a better spot than they were because they're 20-7, 12-2 in the SEC. They've made up some ground. Those two, bad losses. They got a sweep of Auburn. They got a sweep of Missouri. Both teams are in the field right now. They got a win against Arkansas. So yeah, I think those things kind of matter too. And yeah, that's a decent spot for A&M at the moment.
I'm guessing Arkansas is next. Wins San Diego State, neutral floor at Missouri, A&M at home, at Kentucky, and neutral site Oklahoma for whatever that's worth. The predictives like Arkansas, I think more than anybody else. Let me double check this. Yeah, they do. 19 average overall between the three predictives. That would place them as the third team in the SEC. You got the Nick Smith factor. I feel like a lot of things broke Arkansas's way this weekend between Smith coming back and playing well, which is a thing that will count, and picking up a road win against a team that you and I both think is solidly in the field at this point in Missouri.
Yeah, I think you still argue that Arkansas is ahead of A&M. Just my
Interesting.
opinion,
Okay.
but
You might be right.
I still think that's a possibility. But what Arkansas lacks is the
Let me
high powered
interrupt you
wins.
there. Is because I want to get your thoughts on this before you move it. Is that because how much of that is factoring in Nick Smith's absence?
Well, it factors in, but I think again you kind of look at this Arkansas team, and here's the problem for Arkansas, right? What they're lacking is the number of high powered wins, like the top notch wins, is what they're lacking at this point. Um, right? Do you disagree with that? Because they've beaten San Diego State, they have beaten who else? They've beaten Missouri, A&M,
Missouri,
Kentucky
A&M,
on the road.
Kentucky. I mean, those are all teams that are probably 8 seeds or worse.
Are you okay, buddy?
San Diego State would be in what is a 5, 6, 7 right now, maybe.
Yeah, I assume somewhere in there. They're 21-5, and yeah. So, I'm not saying it. I'm not saying that would exactly be that way, but I think that also what Arkansas doesn't have is is right. They don't have any quad four losses, and they've also only played 3 quad four games. And again, that goes beyond your control sometimes, but that helps too. I think when you're looking at it from the committee standpoint, is You don't have any losses there, but you really haven't played a lot of games there, so you played a stronger schedule. I'm just pointing out these things. Like I don't know what order I'd put these teams in all honesty. It's why I'm not a bracketologist, but I don't I don't think Arkansas. I think there are some people that are just looking at Arkansas and saying, well, they're 18-9, or what is their record? I don't know. I can't keep up at this point.
18-9.
18-9, and 3-6 quad one. Just not a ton of quad one wins compared to others, right? If we're comparing all these teams together, that's my point. And
And a
so,
quad 3 loss.
yeah, and a quad three loss, but no quad four losses. Only 3 quad four games. Period. So you've played a stronger schedule. So those again are the kind of things that will all factor in to this thing. Their average. What did I like the average net wins, right? Like I think it's like 118. So like you combine all their wins together, the average net wins 118. I think A&M's a bit higher than that. So I don't know if there's a ton that separates those two. To me, these are both 9-ish seeds right now, 10. So I can't say I have a lot that separates them. All right, but let's get through the rest of these because I'm gonna have a hard out here in a little bit, and I want to make sure we get to one team in particular. So
Well, I feel like, let me start here. I feel like Kentucky has left Auburn this weekend. Is that wrong? And I will give you my case, and it's big wins. A sweep of Tennessee now, which is what, 4 in the net. Home win over A&M. Wins at Mississippi State, Florida at home for what that's worth. Auburn's got a big wins problem. Arkansas at home, Missouri home, Northwestern on the road. Predictive computers have Kentucky at 31, Auburn 20. Strength of resume, Kentucky 31, Auburn 30. Now, the difference, Kentucky's got that quad 4 loss to South Carolina and also another loss in quad 2. Well, there's Florida's got 2 losses outside quad 1, and they're both in quad 2.
leaping Auburn, I mean I can understand the argument because Kentucky's so interesting because we talk about just the value of a quad four loss. It's like, you look at Kentucky and you just see that there. It's just glaring. Um, but like you said, Auburn just does not have enough good wins right now to feel anywhere close to safe. And while we can say the committee no longer factors in recency, right? You can't tell me that they're not going to look at a team that has lost 6 of 8 differently than a team that's done this or that more successfully recent at A&M, right? Um, yes, and I know that it says that everything matters equally. I know it says that, but I'm not buying that. I still think there is part of that is more of a political answer than anything else. Um, so I think when you look at it from Auburn's standpoint, they got to get some good wins to feel comfortable, and they're going to have 3 opportunities: at Kentucky, at Alabama, home against Tennessee. All huge opportunities. They get 2 of those, lock. They get 1 of those and beat Ole Miss, I think they're still fine. But they just need to get 1. Of that 3, they got to get 1 somewhere. Don't know where it comes again. Doesn't matter who it comes against. Obviously, you'd love it to come against Alabama or Tennessee, a little more than Kentucky. But any of them will be huge for Auburn if they can get them. And that's what they're lacking. They just need to pick up at least 1 of those. And assuming you don't lose to Ole Miss at home, and assuming you don't get a bad loss or something in the SEC tournament, I think Auburn's going to get in. Now, they're not going to get in where they want to get in from a seeding standpoint, because I think it would take winning multiple of those final couple to really push them up a seed line or 2. But yes, now that they're 2-7 in quad 1, still clean in quad 3 and 4, and again that'll stay that way if they beat Ole Miss. They just need to pick up a good win somewhere to help them. So
Okay, we got 2 teams left to discuss. We're not going to discuss Florida anymore because Florida's not going to make it
we're
without
not doing that.
Castleton and probably wasn't anyway. Which one do you want to go with next?
Well, Mississippi State, because quickly on Kentucky, yeah, I'm of the agreement.
Yeah.
Kentucky's in right now if it's played because it just got the season sweep against Tennessee. As you said, win quality goes up a bit, just strength of record goes up a bit just by getting that extra win. That's what Kentucky was lacking for the longest time, right? Was getting some just good wins. And now that they've picked them up,
Now it's got two great wins.
yeah. So now that they're 5-7, that's going to cancel out partially the quad 4 loss to South Carolina. So Kentucky sitting in a way better spot than we would have thought a couple weeks ago. All right, Mississippi State next.
Okay, let's start with big wins because this has been State's case for a while. Marquette neutral floor, TCU at home. No Mike Miles, I get it. Still going to look nice on the resume. Missouri at home, Arkansas on the road. State is 3-5 quad 1, 4-4 quad 2. That could be a little problematic, but 2-0 and 9-0 against the last two quads. State is also here's the thing I don't think we brought up with State. State's got 8 wins away from home, although 4 are neutral court. That makes them 8-5 away from the hump. State's problem, one of them, and I don't know how much this is going to matter. I think people can disagree on this, and I really do not know. State 6-8 in the league. That is one of the bigger blemishes against the Bulldogs right now. Okay, strength of resume metrics 47. That is about as bubblicious as you can get. And then the predictives have got State around 40. So there you go.
Yeah, one of the issues that I would point out with Mississippi State is, well, there's two issues. Strength of schedule non-conference wise was not great. Um, it's like in the 200s, right? Like 220 something. Um, and
I've got a different number written down. Let me look that up while you go ahead.
I see non-conference strength of schedule 227. What's
Where are
the
you
number
looking?
you've got? I'm looking
I've got
on Warren Nolan.
61. Okay,
61.
then you're right. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
I
I was
just
gonna
put
say
somebody in the wrong column.
they play. I'm looking at Ken Palm right now. They played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams that are 307 or lower in non-conference. So that's part of it. Now they have the good win against Marquette to kind of balance that out, right? And they got the TCU game, so that helps. But I'm just pointing out the overall non-conference strength of schedule. That's not a huge issue, I don't think. One of the things though that I think is will matter in terms of like where they would be right now versus if they didn't have this. Half their wins have come in quad 4, correct? They have 18
Yes.
wins. They're 9-0 in quad 4 at the moment. So I think that's something else that's not exactly giving them that huge boost that they need. And like you said, they do have the 4 quad 2 losses. Remember, we're just using the quad here as a basis for the argument. We're not saying this is the end all be all, folks. So please keep that in mind as we go along here. We're just pointing this out just from the numbers perspective because this will matter, but we're not saying this is everything that matters. There are some things that are going to matter to different committee members, and it's just you never know. But Mississippi State can be helped by winning at Missouri on Tuesday, as we said, or winning at Vanderbilt, which looks a lot better, and they got A&M at home too. So Mississippi State's got plenty of opportunity. You know what I'm going to say, and I know you are not as strongly into this, but I still think they need to be 9-9, maybe 8-10, get a couple good wins in the SEC tournament. They're fine, but I would not feel comfortable unless they can get to that 9-9 mark in SEC play, and it's based on what their remaining schedule is. So, but you got to field a tournament, and I think they're way closer than they were, a couple weeks ago. I think they're getting there because of that win against Arkansas really boosted that. And now, if they can pick up another one against Missouri, or the one at home against A&M, I think they're going to be a lot better. Because remember, Vanderbilt, good transition here, good segue. They need Vanderbilt to keep rising up the computers, but right now that's not happening. So unless Vanderbilt is there by the time they play on March the 4th, that may not be as big of an opportunity as you would think at this point.
Yeah, I feel like the net has decided that Vanderbilt and Tennessee are just fixed in
Maybe
respective places with the net because it seems like whatever happens, those teams don't move. All right.
We got a
The
10-minute
Commodores.
rant coming on Vanderbilt right now.
Yeah, boy.
I got 10 minutes for this rant.
We both heard it this weekend. All right, I'm gonna give you some foundational information to start this. Okay, here's the nitty gritty on the Commodores. 89 in the net, 19 strength of schedule, 120 non-conference strength of schedule. There's been a little bit of a myth that their non-conference strength of schedule was really strong. The net strength of schedule does not agree with that. Okay, the strength of resume computers have got Vanderbilt at averaged at 62. The predictives have got Vanderbilt averaged at 85, which is why Vanderbilt is 89 in the net. Vanderbilt has lost 5 home games. It has gone 4-5 on the road, 1-2 away from home. 4-7 quad 1, 3-3 quad 2, 2-1 quad 3, 6-1 quad 4. Big wins. That's what Vanderbilt has going for it. Right now, it's got 4 against teams that I think would be in the tournament. However, 3 of those might be 8 seeds or worse. Tennessee at home, Arkansas at home, Auburn at home, and Pitt at home. All right, that's part 1, Blake. Do you want to respond to that, or do you want me to go to part 2? Because I think part 2 might be the most relevant thing that we can talk about with Vanderbilt.
No, just I think everything you said, just make sure that you heard everything that you said. Is all I'm saying before we go on to part 2. And then we can now carry on into part 2 of this conversation.
Okay, part 2. This team a year ago, and I don't know if this is pre-tournament or after the tournament, but the numbers wouldn't be much different. This team had a net of an 80. This team went 12-8 in this league, because one thing that Vanderbilt fans are really banking on is good league record, which is yet to be determined, but a lot of Vanderbilt's, well, what if his projection. So this team a year ago had an 80 net, had a 12-8 record in a league that was better than the SEC is now. It had a net strength of schedule of 37, which is a little weaker than Vandy's. It had a non-conference strength of schedule of 255, which is significantly weaker. It also had a quad 4 loss, which Vanderbilt has. Its quad 4 loss was worse than Vanderbilt's. Had 2 quad 3 losses, which Vanderbilt's got 1. So the bad was worse than what Vanderbilt's got. In quad 2, it went 2-4, whereas Vanderbilt is 3-3. But, Blake, here we go. Good wins, my goodness. Because this team had them. It was 7-7 in quad 1, but I believe this team had 7 or 8 of those that were top 7 NCAA seeds or higher. The team we're talking about is Rutgers. Its wins last year were against Purdue at home, Iowa at home, Illinois at home, Wisconsin on the road, Ohio State at home, Michigan at home, Indiana on the road. Also beat Michigan State at home. And a lot of those teams, I think I counted up that compared to Vanderbilt, and the team we're talking about is Rutgers. If you kind of subtract out what Vanderbilt did from what Rutgers did, if that makes sense, try to put them on an even playing field. Rutgers had 5 wins from teams seeded 3-7 in the field of 68 that Vanderbilt didn't have. That is a massive gap between big wins. Again, the Rutgers bads are worse than Vanderbilt's. But if you put both on a scale, does it balance out? I think it balances a lot more in Rutgers' favor. And Blake, what did the committee do with Rutgers a year ago?
They got sent a date.
Right. So barely in with that resume.
All right. So one thing Vanderbilt, remember, we're doing this in the context of they need to, in my opinion, win out. Are you in disagreement with that, or do you think 3-1 is acceptable?
I think 3-1 maybe with the win in the conference tournament, and that's a big maybe. I don't know. The fans seem convinced that if they go 3-1, they're getting in. I'm nowhere close.
3-1
to
with a
being
loss to
convinced.
Kentucky on the road, you're getting in. Let's use that as a potential option. All right, as long as you don't.
I think 3-1 with a loss at Kentucky, you're being considered, but I think it's on the low end of the bubble.
The problem in that is that the Kentucky win is going to do the most for you in the computers because it will push you up the furthest. LSU will not, Florida will not, Mississippi State will not, to the degree, I think, of winning at Kentucky. Now, it will push you up some by beating. That's where the Florida problem. I think Florida is causing Vanderbilt the most issues right now because, it's no Castleton. Like, part of that, you're going to look at it and say, well, Florida's kind of going in the wrong direction.
Well, wait a minute. They did beat Florida with Castleton. No, the
I
rematch will be
Yes,
without.
but that's my point, is that Florida is going backwards, right? So if Florida's going backwards, it's not helping you because you want Florida going forwards, and I don't think that's necessarily going to happen. So that's all I'm saying. Now they could beat Kentucky and made that looks a bit better, but that's one thing. So let's just use the 3-1 argument because I'm going to try to do this quickly because I know I've got to hurry here. So, all right, so that's one part of the argument. Let's say they go 3-1. Okay, well, let's say some of those losses are close, or excuse me, some of the losses are close, some of the wins are close, or the one loss is close. You know what I'm saying? Here's what I put on Twitter yesterday, okay? And here's why Vanderbilt is such a strange example this season. They have 15 wins right now, okay? 11 of those wins are by 8 points or less. Remember, this is the theme we've used all year with Vanderbilt. Win or lose, it's going to be close, okay? 8 of their 15 wins are by 5 points or less. What do they have that no other team has that we're talking about right now in the tournament conversation? They have a loss in every quadrant, right? They have a loss everywhere. Quad 4, quad 3, quad 2, quad 1. So they've got losses everywhere. So
5 outside of quad 1.
so that is not helping either, all right? And something else to consider here. I know the computers may only consider it to a point, but we talked about this earlier, okay? They have a 57-point loss on their schedule, on their resume, all right? That's something other teams that we're considering do not. Georgia's not an NCAA tournament team. They've got one of those losses. But Vanderbilt now has a 57-point loss to the top team in the field, which is okay, I guess. If you're going to have it to somebody, lose it to the top team in the field that way. The problem becomes if you add the next element into this, right? Well, we talk about the wins. Okay. Well, they lost to Grambling by 2. They lost to NC State by 4. They lost to Missouri by 3. They lost to A&M by 6. And someone used this term on Twitter, and I'm gonna use it myself. Vanderbilt is the ultimate coin flip team. If you're looking at probability, right, and you're trying to figure out what do I make of this team, how could the computers possibly have the computers are stunned, like they are confused, are they not? We talk about like the Tennessee effect. Well, Tennessee has all these great wins where they just dominate teams and their efficiency numbers. All of this are great, but like Vanderbilt's efficiency numbers on defense are not great. And remember, that factors in some to like the net and those kind of things. But they also have to factor in that if you play the same schedule, Chris, think about that, right? With Vanderbilt, if you play the same schedule 27 games in, think about how many possible results you could have based on how close some of these games have been, win or lose. And so I think it's like, it almost feels like the net and some of these other, you just don't know what to do because a lot of wins have been close. Some of a good portion of their losses have been close. So it's like, what do you make of that? And they don't, what they don't have that some of the other teams have is these just convincing wins, right? Just a ton of convincing wins, maybe in the non-conference, some in the SEC part of the schedule. I'm not saying it's going to keep them out. I'm just saying if you look at it as a whole, which we have to, they've played 27 games. They've won 15 of them, but they've also lost 12 of them. And if you look at it as a whole, that's one of the things I think you have to kind of look at if you're from the committee standpoint. I'm not saying I agree with all this, but if you're looking at it from the committee standpoint, you're talking about a team that you probably don't have a great read on right now because other than the fact that, yes, they've won 5 in a row, but they were also 10 and 12 before that happened. And so it is kind of, it's not funny, but like it is part of the equation that you and I have talked about all season, right? This is the ultimate team that every game is going to be close, it feels like. You just don't know which direction it's going to go in. It's going in their favor right now, but remember, they had lost
It
12
could
of
be
those before
Tennessee or Alabama A&M. They're all close.
like it
And
just
then look it up. Yeah.
it's like you just don't know. And so I think that's what's happening here. If you're just looking at it from a metric standpoint, it almost feels like a confusion. Like, what do we do here with this team? Because yes, we fully expect it to be close, but like, which way is this thing going to go? The last 5 have gone in their favor. But remember, something else you pointed out, good wins matter. All right. Pitt, still, it's a good win at this point, right? But what would you say Pitt is? Probably a double digit seed. And I'm trying to speak fast here because I got
Probably
like
about
3
a
minutes.
10.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a win. Arkansas, win. All right. They won that one by double digits. Tennessee, tournament team. They win that one, of course, at the buzzer. Auburn's a tournament team right now. But all the others, right? Like,
Blake, let me just get to the point. It is possible. I don't think it's likely. I don't think it's likely at all, but it's possible that only one of these wins ends up as a team that makes the tournament.
Tennessee.
Right.
Yeah.
Everybody else has got work to do. And,
Yeah.
and that's the difference between them and Rutgers. Rutgers had great wins, and it had a lot of great wins. They have one great win and 3 good wins
All
and
right.
a bunch of blemishes.
I'll say this, just as my final thought here. If Vanderbilt wins out, Vanderbilt's an NCAA tournament team. And I don't care what the computers say. If they went out, if they finish the season on a 9-game winning streak, they should be in the NCAA tournament. Because they would have done enough for me at that point to counter some of the stuff maybe earlier in the season. The Grambling loss, throw it out at that point. I mean, you're not going to, but you know what I'm saying. So that's what I would say. If they go 3-1 and lose to Kentucky, I think it's tricky. But don't discount what they've done the last 5 games, but you also cannot discount the other 22 games either. That's all I'll say. Like, absolutely don't discount a 5-game winning streak that includes a win over Tennessee. But we also can't just forget all the other games just because everything has been positive the last 5 games. So I think, remember, it's the full body of work, which we said with all the other teams. And that's why they are still battling the computers and the tournament committee at this point, because they're not on the bubble yet. Like, they're not. Like, I just don't think they are. But they keep winning and they'll get there. That's all that matters. You just have to keep winning. Lose at LSU, conversation's over. But if you just keep winning, everything will take care of itself. They just put themselves in a little bit more of a hole than other teams have. And that's why they're sitting here needing to continue to rack up wins.
Does Bubblicious still make bubble gum?
Oh, I don't know. I'm out. I'm like,
I feel like
I had to go fast here because
we need to be fishing for a sponsor here.
Maybe. Like, I need some water. By the way, I got this radio coming up in Birmingham here in about 2 minutes, and so like I've been trying to speed through to get everything I need to get through. I think I got most of it. There's going to be things I forget.
Just as I did on the on our recap videos for the weekend. We both are up against it today.
All right, that's all I got, Chris.
Parting thoughts.
We'll talk about a lot more of this other videos. We got baseball, basketball coming. I don't know what
all
else
right, we got a lot of stuff coming.
Hit subscribe. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, lots of stuff. Hit subscribe. And our audio is overlapping again. My apologies. My internet connection sucks right now. So we're not meaning to talk over each other when we do, but you may be hearing it that way. In any case, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.